See, Terry, I'm offended by the fact that you keep referring to it as pornography when we haven't defined what pornography
Danny,
is.
I'm referring to the fact that there is a thing
Terry,
called pornography. There is a thing called pornography.
There's a test called the Miller test.
And my concern
Jennifer
and
actually
for
referenced
that
it.
up, Danny, I'm really sorry.
There's a test called the Miller test.
Okay, stop. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Stop.
In the past few weeks, months, actually several months, we've had many people come to us with concerns about our libraries.
This is not a reasonable type of material that we're discussing here. This should offend you. This should shock you.
Thank you for clarifying the library policy. There's too much power in the hand of just one person. Rather, there should be a policy beforehand vetting the books. For example, this book is entitled Dead End by Jason Myers, and it's in the Prairie High School. And just ahead of time, if you have any young ears, this would not be something they'd want to hear. And it goes on and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And this is just one of the books that's in there.
And I'd like to you guys and everybody really to think about why people read books to begin with. We read these things, we allow these things into our minds. And as children, they don't know what doors to open, what doors to close.
Who's responsible for vetting these books as they come in? We have a right and a responsibility to love our neighbors, especially the least of them, the children.
I guarantee that we were just as uncomfortable as every single one of you, as we should be.
This is a real concern.
It is a concern for me as well.
Okay, so they read the book to us, and we were happy these girls were not here.
So the next thing on our agenda under director reports was to have a discussion about citizens' comments. I think Terry alluded to it that the audience everybody in the room was uncomfortable last meeting. The board requires that all comments spoken at the meeting be appropriate for a family audience.
Your idea of what pornography is can be very different from what another person. So to be able to draw that line to say this is pornographic, does it have sexual content in it? Yes.
Everyone in the room was uncomfortable last meeting. I think those of us that were reading those were too, and that proves a point. These books are appropriate for children, but they're not appropriate here amongst adults. Why not? We don't want to take away parental rights with something that was said there, and I agree, but we will take away your choice of free speech. Look how fast you moved on that policy. That was pretty quick. To your point about hypocrisy, I agree. It was hypocritical. You can't talk aloud, but I'm not shutting down your voice. Those are hypocritical statements. I think that it's great that there's a library policy, but there's obviously some logical inconsistencies with it. Library policy section 8, commercial films. Under no circumstance will R-rated films or videos be approved for student viewing. Aren't educators supposed to model clear logic and reasoning and to promote, as we heard, good thinking? X-rated books are okay. R-rated films are not. How is that not hypocrisy? This seems to be a recurring theme. Why does the school need inappropriate pornographic books at all? No one's taking away a parent's right to let a child read a book, and that's misleading in so many ways. Aren't they on Amazon? Aren't they at a public library? Can't they get them there if the parents want them to read it? And as you said, if the students are not checking out the books, why waste funding in this area? Challenged books only checked out 9 times? That's 9 times too many. And again, why waste the money on these books?
And I do think that there is an issue of equity involved in a school library. Just as we talk about a parent's right to restrict books, there's also this other side of the coin, a parent's right to access those books for their kids.
It was said, that we don't take rights from parents, but I don't believe that we're under any obligation to supply material to meet the whims of every conceivable parent, even the most extreme among us. A right for parents to choose does not equal an obligation for us to supply. That's a logical fallacy. Also, I heard about how complicated things are, but bad actors always try to complicate what is simple using logical fallacies and deferring to other authorities. I used this method often when I was a child. When I disobeyed my parents, I would say, "Dad, you just don't understand. It's very hard. Mom told me so and so." These are common tactics of people who aren't engaging with the debate at face value.
That's the hard part, is that what is one person's idea of morally right and appropriate is another group's term for, well, this is an important book.
I would say that the heart of this whole conversation and this dilemma rests in those moral and ethical questions, and it goes beyond the library policy. Morality based on statistics is called moral relativism, and that in itself is a moral position. It's not a neutral position. Moral relativism is the most cowardice position because it's allowing any position, no matter how evil and destructive, if it accomplishes a 51% vote. You're basically saying that any moral evil that accomplishes that vote is right and good and virtuous, and that's a surrender to evil.
I note that there's nothing on the agenda about us having this 1 hour discussion about some very important
Actually,
It's on board docs.
Yeah.
it's on board docs if you were to open it.
Bill 2331, Policy 2021, and then we're going to have a conversation about citizens' comments when we're done with this one.
So it doesn't specifically say we're going to talk about library policy. I would suggest that most people wouldn't pick up on that that's library policy, nor would they look to see what it was. When I came on the board, this was a topic that was being brought up at meetings while I was observing before I came. I came on the board in December, and people were bringing this stuff up and asking questions about it, and
The first comments that we got were in January.
well, last year in December, we were talking about it. November, people were questioning and asking questions about it before I became a member. And I became a member in December. I could be mistaken. Maybe
I
I'm
think
mistaken.
you are, because I think the first comments that we had by the citizen who first brought it up was in the January board meeting.
But my main concern is the sexualized material, and you as school board members have the power and authority to make policy to protect our children, our libraries, and the books they offer to our children. Last meeting, I had talked about the Scholastics Book Fair and standards for explicit sexual content in schools, and that we as a school have an obligation, schools with written appropriate standards for sexually explicit materials.
Let's keep our options, because if we take away options from parents and we take away options from families, then we're failing.
Public school libraries are not private homes. They are not churches. They are safe public spaces with collections of diverse material for diverse people that are represented in the diverse communities in which they are located. Thank you, Board, for continuing to protect everyone's rights in this district, as you have been doing, and not giving way to the ceaseless bullying tactics of this small but very loud group.
If you don't want your kids to read a book, be involved, because it is absolutely up to you. It is not up to this board.